Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my little channel. I'm so excited about today's video because not only am I making one of my most wanted Pinterest items, but it is also going to be my first ever sewing tutorial. So yeah, I tried my best to create something between a vlog and a tutorial. I hope I did a good job at explaining everything. So the skirt we're going to be making today is very much inspired by the rise of polka dots. I have always loved polka dots. This skirt is very much inspired by this whole comeback of polka dots, but specifically this is one version of it that has this gorgeous little ruffle that I absolutely love. That is the version that we are going to be making today. So grab your materials and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to draft my pattern, I will start on the edge here and I will measure a quarter of my hip measurement, and I will also add about a centimeter of ease to that. So my hips are 90 centimeters, so divided by 4, that is 22.5 plus 1 is 23.5. So I will just round that to 24 centimeters and I'll use the edge of my paper. So I will just go up 24 centimeters. And then you want to measure the distance between your waist and your hip line. So for me, that is about 18 centimeters. So I will make a mark at 18 centimeters. And then I will go up by a quarter of my hip measurement, and this time I'll add an ease of about 3 centimeters, so that will be about 25.5 centimeters. So I'm just going to measure 25.5 from that waist to hip line measurement, and I will go up, and then I will connect those 2 points, waist to my hip, and then you want to measure from your waist to pretty much where you want your skirt to end, so the hem of your skirt. So for me that is about 62 centimeters, so I'll measure 40. My ruler is not big enough, so 40, and then I'll add another 23 centimeters down. So what I'm going to do is I will actually add a couple of more centimeters so that my skirt has a little bit more volume as we get towards the hem. So this is 25.5, so if I wanted it to be straight, I'd go 25.5 at the hem, but I'm actually going to go up to 28. So 28 centimeters, and then I will connect to those 2 points. All right, so that is our skirt. Now I want to add a little bit of curve to this because our bodies are actually curved and this is a flat piece, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to measure down 1 centimeter from my center front at the waist, and then I will use the curved edge of my ruler to connect these 2 points. And then, so that is our new line basically. I will actually curve this line because this is going to go around your hip and your hip is curved, whereas this is a straight line. I'm going to make this seem a little bit more curved. I'm just got to find the right curve. There we go. And then we're going to do the same thing with our hem. I will go up by like 1 centimeter, and then again use my ruler to carve out that edge. So that is our basic skirt pattern. The next thing that we want to do is add our grain line. So we're going to cut this skirt on the bias. This is our straight grain, and we're going to cut this skirt on the bias. To find the 90-degree angle, I will make a line that is parallel to my grain line, and I'll use the hip line basically to ensure that there is a 90-degree angle here. So I'll just redraw that, and then I'll measure 1 centimeter out and 1 centimeter out from this line. And then once I have a little square, I will place my ruler so that it is at the 2 opposite points of the little square that we just created, and draw my grain line. So that is my grain line. That is how, and I'll just make this into an arrow so that we don't get confused. We'll just go ahead and add some notches. One notch here, and then we can do a notch here as well, because these are going to help us match our back and our front of our skirt. The last thing that we're going to do is add our seam allowance. So we are going to make this skirt with French seams. So we're going to do 1.5 centimeters along this edge. We can do 2 centimeters for the hem. And then for the waistline, what I would recommend that you do is just measure your elastic. And my elastic is about 1 centimeter. So what I'm going to do is add 1.5 centimeters to this seam, like for seam allowance. And that should give me enough to make my elastic casing and also to have that little bit of allowance to fold underneath. So just recap, 1.5 centimeters, or adjust the measurement according to your elastic, and then 1.5 centimeters, and then 2 centimeters. Okay, so my fabric is here and I'm going to show you what I'll be using. So both of these materials are from the fabric store. For the main skirt, I will be using this gorgeous Polkadot Georgette. I'm very excited about this. This is very sheer. I'm going to line it with this Rayon Challis. And yeah, it's going to be very... This is also a little bit sheer, but I think that once they're layered, they will be fine. So the length of the material you'll need kind of depends on how wide your fabric is. So if your fabric is wide enough, you might be able to get away with like 1.5 meters, maybe 160, 180. If it's a little bit more narrow, then you might need up to 2 meters. So just double check with the material that you are using. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So to cut up my skirt, I laid up my fabric and then created this kind of diagonal fold by matching the raw edge of the fabric with one of the salvages, and then just mirrored that onto the other side. And then I just placed my pattern onto the fabric, pinned it and cut it out. So you want to cut 2 pieces, a front and a back for your skirt. And of course, don't forget to notch both of your pieces, because that will make it a lot easier to match them up when it's time to sew them together. And if you're lining your skirt, then repeat the exact same steps for your lining fabric. Okay, so here is the front and the back of my skirt. So what I'm going to do now is pin and sew the side seams, but we're going to be doing French seams. So this is the good side. This is the side that we want to be on the outside when we're wearing our skirt. And then this is the inside of the skirt. So you want the 2 insides touching together. And then you are going to use your notches here to match these 2 pieces of fabric and sew with a 0.5 millimeter seam allowance. So I just sewed my front and back together. Now what we're going to do is iron those seams open, and we'll do the same for the lining as well. We're going to give our project a good press. When you're sewing something, it is very important to press every single seam, because that will ensure that your project looks nice and neat. So once you've ironed your seams open, just turn your skirt the wrong way out, basically.
and give your seams another good press. And then you can pin your seams again and sew them with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. And of course, repeat for the lining. And that is how you create a French seam. French seams are a little bit more time consuming to make, but they give the inside of your garment such a clean and tidy look, and that is very important. It's very important always for your garment to look nice and pretty and neat, both on the outside and the inside. And you also don't have to use an overlocker if you don't have one. Right, so here is the skirt, and I'm just going to show you what I have done. So I pressed both my lining and my main fabric, and I just went ahead and matched them at the side seam here. So let me show you. So what you want to do is grab your 2 seams and then just match them together. And what I did is I put the seam allowance of the front towards the back of my skirt. So this is the back, this is the front. And then for my lining, I put it towards the front so that my waistband is not bulky. And then you do that on both sides. You just want to pin together your lining and your main fabric. If you want to, you can do a very light basting stitch so that your fabrics don't slip. I'll just go ahead and straight away make my casing so I can insert my elastic. But if you're a beginner, you should probably just do a very light basting stitch with your sewing machine. So just put it on the widest stitch length and just stitch around so that your fabrics don't move. So now we are going to move over to the ironing board and make our casing. To create the elastic casing, I just folded over my seam allowance, the seam allowance that we added at the start. So for me, that was 1.5 centimeters. Of course, I made sure that my elastic could fit through. I also tucked in the raw edge. And you also want to leave an opening when you're sewing your waistband so that you can insert your elastic through. And then you can go ahead and cut your elastic to your waist measurement. What I did was I just attached one end of my elastic to a safety pin and just pulled it through the opening. Then once your elastic is through to the other side, you can just bring the 2 ends together and sew them with a zigzag stitch. And then you can tuck in the rest of your waistband and sew it shut.
All right, we are almost done with this. So I've just put her on a hanger and I'll just let her hang for, I think overnight should be enough. But because this is a bias cut skirt, it has to like drape and settle and stuff. So I'm going to do that, tidy up, and then we can add the ruffle and make it look gorgeous and fancy. Today is the perfect, cozy, wintry day to just stay home and sew. So that's what we're doing. So, an update on the skirt. It has been hanging for a couple of days, so that has allowed for the fabric to stretch out and drape. And that's something that you should always do when you make anything, a dress, a skirt, anything on the bias. Just let it hang for a couple of days. So now what we're going to do is hem it. So because our skirt is uneven because it has stretched out, most likely, what I'm going to do to make the hemming process easier is take the measurement I want my skirt to have when it's hemmed. For me, I think that was around 62 or 63 centimeters, and I'm going to measure all around the skirt from top here all the way down to about 62 centimeters, and then whatever's left over, I'll just turn it around to my hem. So we're just going to measure your measurement, say mine for example 63, so 63, 63, 63 all around, and pretty much hem the exits. She is looking so cute. I just pinned the hem in place. Oh my god. And just making sure that it's nice and even. And I think it is. So I also hemmed the lining. I just pinned it roughly so that it sits just a little bit above my main fabric. And now we are going to do a regular double turned hem. So we'll just fold it twice to encase the raw edges and
then we can take it to the machine and sew it. Now, if you want to add the ruffle, then then I'll show you how to cut the ruffle. If you don't want to add the ruffle, that's perfectly fine. Then you can give your skirt a final press. You can add her to your wardrobe. But if you want to add the ruffle detail, then I will show you what to do. So for the ruffle, I'm going to measure from one side seam. So the ruffle's going to go about 2 centimeters above the hem. So I'm going to measure along my skirt. So from side seam to side seam, roughly 2 centimeters above my hem. So that's 61 centimeters. So 61 and 61 on the other side. You want to cut 2 pieces, 2 very long rectangles that are 122 by 6 centimeters, because then we're going to fold it in half and sew it with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So in order to be a little bit more strategic regarding waste when cutting my fabric, so instead of cutting the 2 pieces, I cut 4 pieces that I then sew together. So here I am hemming the skirt and then just sewing all my ruffle pieces together. So once you have a very long strip, you want to fold it in half and just sew along the edge with a 1 centimeter seam allowance to make a very, very long tube that you will then turn around and iron very well. And then you want to sew the 2 ends of your tube together so that you have a very big circle. Then you can go ahead and sew your 2 rows of gathering stitches. I always recommend doing 2 rows of gathering stitches because that makes your gathers look much neater in the end. And then just match the side seams of your skirt to the side seams of your ruffle and pull the loose threads to create your gathers. And then you can pin your ruffle 2 centimeters above the hem and go ahead and sew it in place, which is where the 2 rows of gathering stitches come in handy, because you can just place your needle in between them and avoids those super pleats that you can get sometimes when you sew gathers. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and remove those gathering stitches and give your hem a final press and your skirt is done.
Okay, so the skirt is now finished. Here she is. I'm so happy with how this turned out. And the ruffle, you guys, this ruffle is so cute. I am obsessed with it and I'm going to wear her so much. I even want to make another version of this exact same skirt with the little ruffle in a fabric that I already have in my stash. I used this fabric to make my birthday dress earlier this year. It's like a tiger print, red and white tiger print. So that is going to look so cute in this design. So stay tuned because I might do a little vlog of that. So all the materials that I used to make this skirt will be listed down below. I'm looking forward to doing a few more sewing tutorials. I've been receiving a lot of requests to do a tutorial on the wrap skirt that I made last time. So I think that will be coming very, very soon. So that is all from me today. Thank you so, so much for watching this video. I hope you get to make this skirt. And if you do, please, please send me a DM, a photo, tag me. I don't know. I really, really, really want to see it. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe because there will be lots of sewing content coming up. I know you guys love it. And I hope you'll have a wonderful day. I will see you next time.